Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So we all welcome the news that the NCAA have changed their participation policy. They've banned anybody who wasn't assigned female at birth from participating in the women's division. So if you are male, you cannot participate in women's sports anymore. Some people want to call it a ban on transgender athletes. I call it restoring categories to their rightful purpose. But a lot of people are urging the NCAA to go a step further, to correct the damage that has been done as a result of their old policy. They have work to do. They need to start righting the wrongs. They knew their policy was wrong. They knew their policy made women's sports unsafe and unfair, but they went ahead and did it anyway. And then they tried to pass the buck and say, well, we're changing our policy. It's up to you now. But they never banned male athletes from the women's division until recently. And one influential person who's asking the same thing of them to go back and correct the wrongs that you caused is President Donald Trump. He has contacted the NCAA and he's asking various schools to correct their records, to correct their results, their championships that were given to male athletes. Basically, take those championships back and give them to the rightful owner. The woman who came second, who would have been the fastest woman in the tournament, is the rightful winner. I don't know how feasible this is, but this is what people are asking. And if you ask me, it's probably just a stroke of a pen. We all have the times of the women who participated. We all have records of where everybody placed. All they need to do is update it. The Trump administration's Department of Education asked the NCAA and high schools across the nation to scrub any titles and records in women's and girls' sports set by biological males. US Department of Education's Office of General Counsel sent a letter to both the NCAA and the National Federation of State High School Associations asking them to restore to female athletes the records, titles, awards, and recognitions misappropriated by biological males competing in female categories. But scholarships were also taken from women. That's an absolute travesty. A statement from the Department of Education notes that this request comes following the historic executive order signed by President Trump that barred males from competing in women's and girls' sports. It also notes that what is being asked of the NCAA specifically is in line with the organization's recently adopted policy intended to keep female athletics exactly that, female. Because of President Trump's bold leadership, men will no longer be allowed to compete in women's sports regardless of how they identify. And the NCAA has correctly changed its tune on its discriminatory practices against female athletes. That's exactly what that was. Deputy General Counsel Candice Jackson said in a statement, "The next necessary step is to restore athletic records to women who have for years been devalued, ignored, and forced to watch men steal their accolades. The Trump Education Department will do everything in our power to right this wrong and champion the hard-earned accomplishments of past, current, and future female collegiate athletes." Wow. The lawsuit that's going on at the moment with the students from the University of Pennsylvania, they're also calling for the school to restore the records, to restore the results, to restore the accolades to female athletes. And the Department of Education also sent a statement to Riley Gaines. They said for the past 4 years, women have been begging for equal opportunities to compete and succeed, only to be ignored. A president who recognizes and celebrates women for our accomplishments is long overdue. Restoring stolen athletic accolades to their rightful owners is a crucial step towards reinstating accountability, integrity, and common sense. One that I wholeheartedly support. Of course, I agree that these records need to be adjusted. We cannot have a record in a female division, in a woman's division, being held by a male athlete. I don't care how that person identifies. That is absolutely unacceptable. And it's a mockery of women's sports. If we want to salvage what has been lost over these last few years, which is going to be very difficult, this will be a great start. And to give you some insight into how this 1% of the population has affected women's sports in general, it's not just the women who came second who are affected. It's not just the women who stood on the podium who were affected. Even the women who wouldn't have even made the podium because their times weren't as fast as the women who made the podium. But having one man in their competition could have led to one person missing out and even going to a championship, even qualifying for a championship by one spot. And that is devastating to find out that it was because there was a male athlete in your division that you couldn't go to a championship. You couldn't qualify as hard as you worked. So plaintiff Ellen Holmsquisk did not qualify for the Ivy League championships that year. Holmsquisk claimed she was told by a coach that she had missed the cutoff by one spot, arguing that Thomas's participation effectively denied her the opportunity to compete. The girls also alleged that they were told that Leah Thomas would not be in the same locker room as them. Then come to find out that that was not the case. Obviously, they did allow Leah Thomas into the women's locker room. A swim coach allegedly told Kazarowski that Thomas would not be using the same locker room when Thomas joined the women's team. But that changed in the fall of 2021. That coach told Kazarowski there was nothing he could do about it, according to the lawsuit. Harvard did not provide a unisex bathroom or separate bathroom for Thomas to use or for any other woman to use who did not want to use the women's locker room while Thomas was using it. During the Ivy League championships, the complaint states. So always remember that the women didn't just have accolades and scholarships and championships stolen from them, spots on certain teams taken from them, or, qualifying for certain events taken from them. They also had their dignity taken from them. They had their privacy stolen from them. They weren't even asked for their consent. So it runs much deeper, and no matter how much they do try to rectify it, they have gone through something that you cannot undo now. But knowing that this is going to not happen in the future, that young girls coming up next are not going to have to go through what they went through, I'm sure means the world to them. And it's good to hear that the Trump administration is putting pressure on the NCAA and these schools to right their wrongs as much as it is possible for them to do so. So let's look at the records that Leah Thomas currently holds. If this isn't a mockery of women's sports, I don't know what is. However, in saying that, I'm so glad that this will not continue. That we're not going to have this happen to more women's records. Oh, but it's just 10 athletes. But look how many records have been affected. Look how many competitions have been affected. How many championships have been affected. When we think about it, all the stories I've done about the high school girls and what they went through. Multiple girls doing track and field, for example, having medals taken from them and titles taken from them that they could have used to attract more options when it came to scholarships, to attract more options when it came to schools.
To pull out a W in one race, it should be enough. That, who cares if it was an unfair race in 10 others? I wonder how you felt reading that. I'll start with you on that, Chelsea, about how, look, you did win. And in fact, the court accepted that. The Second Circuit wrote, plaintiffs simply have not been deprived of a, quote, chance to be champions.
Well, there were 4 state championships where I should have been at the top of the podium, but instead that honor went to a male. And in the races that I did win, those were still unfair races. And there were girls that still lost opportunities in those races because of the biological males in that race. And so it doesn't really matter. We need our records fixed to reflect what actually happened in the race. And that is not what they currently say.
One of the other things, Alana, that the ACLU is pointing out is you both did go on to race in college and obtain scholarships too, from what I read. And so what are you complaining about? You didn't lose anything.
Well, like Chelsea said, we did win a few times, but it's bigger than just me and her and the other girls involved. In the case, it's about the girls that didn't get to advance to other meets and didn't get scholarships. And so it's just about doing it for future generations of women and just making sure that we don't become sidelined in our own sport.
Mm-hmm. Megan, I'll just point out on that alone, as Chelsea said, she lost out on 4 state championships. Those boys, 2 boys in a 3-year period, took 15 state championships and set 17 state records. Just think about that. And 85 times they displaced girls. So it's not just about the other girls. It is about Chelsea. It is about Alana. We don't know what scholarships they could have gotten had Chelsea gotten all of the state championships that she should have been rightly awarded. We don't know that. What we do know is that those records are wrong, that it was unfairly administered in terms of the rules, and that they need to fix it. So I think that it's such
right. There's
an
a difference
issue.
between winning this one and winning that one and looking like FloJo to the colleges who are doing the recruiting. And the entrance of two biological males into your competition may have been the line between you and those two places.
Exactly. I mean, there is a difference between 10 state championships and one. We know that intuitively.
It's not just about winning or losing. It affected their careers. The school you go to has an impact on your career path. It's all connected, whether people want to acknowledge it or not. What has been taken from these female athletes, I don't even think we can comprehend. Strip? No one wants to see that. An asterisk in the appropriate place would suffice, just saying. Yes, take all the trophies and give them to the actual women who won. That would be the fair thing to do. This needs to happen. It's an absolute injustice to the women that worked so hard to be the best. This must end in disgrace for all those who supported men in women's sports. That's going to include all the men who competed in women's sports. Do it. None were fairly earned, and everyone knows it. So people might think that this sounds really mean to take away championships from somebody or to strip them of titles. But don't blame the female athletes. Don't blame the current administration. Blame the administration that encouraged this. Blame the administration that allowed this in the first place, that allowed male athletes to compete in women's categories. Because all they did was sell people a lie, including the male athletes. And now we're getting back to reality. And the reality is, none of these male athletes won any of these accolades fairly. They weren't obtained through correct means, through legitimate means. So it's only right that they be stripped of those titles. Just like when it comes to doping. When we find out that somebody is guilty of doping and they've won a championship or they've broken a record, things have to be adjusted to reflect the rightful winner. This is no different. So I'm curious to see what the NCAA says in response. But if I hear anything, I will let you know. Let's hope they do the right thing. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.